The moon bled silver across the valley, where wolves spoke in howls, and humans remembered what it meant to be forgotten. In the shadow of ancient pines, where frost kissed the earth and breath became smoke, there lived a girl whose body betrayed her the night she should have become whole. Her name was Kale, and she would learn that some transformations break you so thoroughly that what grows back is something the world has never seen. The night of shattered bones. The elders said the first shift was sacred, a doorway between flesh and spirit, between weakness and strength. They gathered in the clearing when the full moon rose fat and luminous, their eyes reflecting centuries of unchanged ritual. Kyle stood at the center, 16 and trembling, her mother's hand pressed against her spine. "Let the wolf rise," the Alpha commanded, his voice like gravel grinding beneath mountain weight. But when the shift came, it came wrong. Her bones didn't slide into place, they shattered. The sound was wet and terrible, like branches snapping under ice. Kyle screamed, a sound too human for the transformation, too animal for comfort. Her spine arched impossibly, vertebrae cracking one by one. Where fur should have bloomed, her skin split and bled. Where paws should have formed, her hands remained twisted, neither wolf nor human. The pack watched in horror. Some looked away, others couldn't stop staring. Her wolf never came. Instead, consciousness fled, and Kale collapsed into darkness. Her body a broken thing sprawled in moonlight. She woke 3 days later in the healer's den, bones reset, but memories intact. The pack's eyes had changed when they looked at her. Where there had been anticipation, now there was only pity. And beneath the pity, something colder, disgust. "Broken shift," they whispered behind cupped hands. "Her wolf rejected her." "Weak blood," others said. "It happens sometimes." Nature's way of culling. Kyle heard it all. The whispers followed her like shadows, clinging to her skin no matter how fast she walked or how far she ran. The children pointed and giggled. The warriors turned away. Even her mother's eyes held a sorrow that felt like abandonment. She became the joke, the cautionary tale, the girl whose body wasn't strong enough to hold a wolf. They called her halfling, the broken one, moonless. And Kyle learned to make herself small, to exist in the spaces between conversations, to disappear into chores and silence. She learned that invisibility was a kind of armor, though it never stopped the pain. Years passed like cold water through cupped hands, impossible to hold, impossible to stop. Kale grew into her bones, her body filling out even as her spirit hollowed. She worked the tannery, processing hides that other wolves brought back from hunts she would never join. Her hands became scarred and strong, her shoulders broad from hauling leather and firewood. But at night, when the pack ran beneath the moon, she stayed behind, always behind. She watched them from her window, silver forms streaking through trees, their howls harmonizing with wind and starlight, and something in her chest ached with a longing so profound it felt like drowning. "You'll never be one of them," her reflection whispered back from darkened glass. "Accept it." The solstice that changed everything. The winter solstice arrived with snow that fell like ash and cold that bit through fur and flesh alike. The pack gathered for the sacred hunt, a tradition older than memory. Even Kale was required to attend, though she would remain at the camp, preparing the feast fires while the others ran. She was tending kindling when he appeared, not a wolf, not entirely. He stood at the forest's edge, tall and wrapped in shadows that moved wrong, that seemed to breathe. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but his eyes, God's, his eyes, burned like embers in smoke. They fixed on Kyle with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You," he said, his voice neither growl nor speech, but something between. "You smell of moonlessness." Kyle froze. Fear and something stranger coiled in her belly. "I'm no one," she whispered. "No one," he repeated, stepping closer. Snow evaporated where his feet touched earth. "The pack believes this, but the moon knows better." He moved like water, like inevitability. Before Kale could retreat, he was there, so close she could feel heat radiating from his skin. He smelled of pine smoke, and something wild, something that made her wolf, the one she thought had never existed, stirred deep within her marrow. "Your shift didn't break you," he murmured, his breath ghosting across her cheek. "It was testing you, preparing you." For what?" Her voice cracked. "For what comes next?" Then his mouth was on hers, and the world exploded into sensation. Her body ignited, every nerve ending screaming alive. The kiss tasted of copper and starlight, of promises and inevitability. When he pulled away, Kyle was gasping, her hands clutching his cloak. "Who?" But he was already gone, dissolving into shadow and snow like he'd never existed at all. Kyle stood alone in the clearing, her lips burning, her heart hammering against ribs that suddenly felt too small. Something had changed, something fundamental. That night, she dreamed of wolves with two heads and eyes like molten gold. The secret growing inside 3 moons passed, and Kale's body began to betray her in new ways. First came the nausea, striking without warning as she hauled water from the creek. Then the exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness that made even breathing feel like effort. Her breasts swelled, tender and aching. Her clothes grew tight around her middle. She told no one. What could she say? That a shadow man had kissed her, and now something grew inside her belly. They already thought her broken. This would only confirm it. She bound her belly with cloth, wore loose tunics, and avoided the communal spaces where the pack gathered. For a time, it worked. The pack was so accustomed to her absence that they barely noticed when she withdrew further. But wolves have keen senses, and secrets are difficult prey. It was Mira who noticed first, the beta's daughter, cruel and beautiful, with a smile like a blade. She cornered Kale at the washing stones, her eyes gleaming with discovery. "You reek," Mira said, circling like a predator, "of milk and hormones and something else." Kale's hand stilled in the water. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" Mira laughed, sharp and delighted. "The broken one is pregnant. This will be delicious." She left before Kyle could respond, and by nightfall, the entire pack knew. They gathered in the great hall, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and morbid curiosity. The Alpha sat on his carved throne, his expression unreadable. Kyle stood before them, her bound belly exposed now, her chin raised despite the trembling in her legs. "Who is the father?" the Alpha demanded. "I don't know." And the truth felt like swallowing glass. Laughter erupted, vicious, mocking, echoing off stone walls. The pack howled with amusement at the broken girl who couldn't shift, but somehow managed to spread her legs. "Pathetic," someone spat. "Whore," another hissed. "She probably doesn't even know if it's human or wolf." The Alpha raised his hand, and silence fell like an executioner's blade. "You will birth this abomination alone," he declared. "No pack healer will attend you. No wolf will acknowledge the offspring. You are a stain on this pack, and when the child is born, we will decide what to do with it." Kyle felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart. That had broken long ago. Something deeper. Something that had been holding her together through years of ridicule and rejection. "So be it," she whispered. She left the hall and didn't look back. Exile in her own home. The pack didn't exile her formally. That would require acknowledgement. Instead, they erased her. When she walked through the compound, wolves turned their backs. When she needed food, she scavenged from the compost. When winter storms battered her small den at the edge of pack territory, no one came to check if she still breathed. Kyle learned to survive on scraps and stubbornness. Her belly grew round and heavy, the life inside her moving with increasing vigor. Sometimes, late at night, she felt the kicks, strong, insistent, as if whatever grew inside her was demanding to be known, to be seen. She talked to them in whispers, her hands pressed against stretched skin. "I don't know who your father is," she admitted. "I don't know what you'll be, but I will love you, even if no one else does." The words felt like prayer and promise intertwined. As her time drew near, Kyle prepared as best she could. She gathered moss and clean cloth, boiled water over a small fire, fashioned crude tools from bone and stone. She had seen births before, watched the pack healers work. She would manage. She had to. But doubt gnawed at her with sharp teeth. What if the birth went wrong? What if the children were deformed, broken like her shift? What if they came out human in a wolf pack, or wolves too wild to control? What if they died? She pushed the thoughts away and focused on breathing, on the present moment, on the life that insisted on being born despite everything. The contractions began on the night of the new moon, when darkness swallowed the world whole, and stars shone like distant, uncaring eyes. Pain wrapped around Kale's middle and squeezed, a fist made of fire and inevitability. She had prepared for pain. She had not prepared for this. Agony that rewrote her understanding of suffering, that made her broken shift feel like a gentle caress in comparison. Hours passed, or days. Time became meaningless, measured only in contractions and the spaces between. Kyle's den filled with her screams, her prayers, her curses at gods who seemed determined to kill her. And through it all, she was alone. The birth under bleeding stars. The moon returned as the birth reached its crescendo, not the full moon of her broken shift, but a crescent, thin and sharp as a claw. It hung in the sky like a smile, watching as Kale's body split open to bring forth life. The first child came with a gush of fluid and blood, small and slick and screaming. Kyle caught him with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the tiny wolf pup. Because he was all wolf, perfectly formed, his fur dark as midnight. But there was something else. On his shoulder, a mark glowed silver. An intricate symbol that Kyle recognized from the ancient texts, from stories the elders told in hushed voices. The mark of the first Alpha, the sign of ancestral leadership, unseen for 3 centuries. Kyle had no time to process this. The second contraction came like thunder, and she barely managed to lay the first pup aside before her body expelled the second child. Another pup. Identical to the first, down to the midnight fur and glowing eyes, and on his shoulder the same mark, pulsing with silver light. Twins, both male, both marked by the ancient bloodline. Kyle collapsed back against the den wall, her body shaking with exhaustion and shock. The pups crawled toward her, instinct guiding them to her breast. As they latched on, something profound shifted in the air, a pressure, a presence, as if the universe itself was taking notice. Outside, the thin moon began to change. It swelled, growing fuller and brighter, bathing the packlands in silver radiance. Wolves across the territory stopped mid-stride, their heads turning toward Kyle's den. They felt it, the pulse of ancient power, the call of bloodline so old it predated their pack's founding. In her den, Kyle held her sons and wept. Not from pain now, but from something else. Something that felt like vindication, like destiny, like the universe finally explaining why she had suffered. The broken shift hadn't been a failure, it had been preparation. Her body hadn't been strong enough to hold one wolf, so it had made room for 2. The pack's reckoning. They came at dawn. The entire pack, drawn by the power radiating from Kale's den like heat from a forge. The Alpha led them, his face unreadable, his eyes wide with something that might have been fear. They found Kyle sitting upright, exhausted but defiant, her twin sons nursing at her breast. The marks on their shoulders glowed in the morning light, undeniable and unmistakable. The pack fell silent, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Impossible, the beta whispered. The mark of the first. The eldest elder breathed, her voice cracking with age and awe. I never thought. In my lifetime. The Alpha stepped forward slowly, his eyes fixed on the pups. Kale's arms tightened around her children, her teeth bared in a snarl that was more wolf than she'd ever managed before. You will not touch them, she growled. The Alpha stopped. For the first time in Kyle's memory, he looked uncertain. The prophecy, the elder continued, her voice growing stronger. When the moon crowns the broken with twin marks of power, the pack will rise or fall by her will. She who births the next age will be mother to all, and her word will be law. Silence crashed over the gathering like a wave. Every eye turned to Kale, no longer broken, no longer a joke, but something else entirely. Something dangerous and sacred. "You mocked me," Kyle said quietly, her voice carrying in the stillness. "You cast me out. You let me suffer alone, hoping I would die in childbirth and spare you the embarrassment of my existence." The pack shifted uncomfortably. No one met her eyes. "And now you come, because power has made me worthy of acknowledgement." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Now you remember my name." The Alpha's jaw tightened. "The marks are genuine. The prophecy is clear. You are what you are." "Say it," Kyle demanded. The Alpha's eyes flashed with anger and something else, submission. The word came out strangled, as if it physically pained him. "Pack Mother. Mother of Alphas, bearer of the new age." The titles hung in the air, heavy with import. One by one, the pack began to kneel. First the elders, their old bones creaking, then the warriors, pride warring with instinct. Finally, even the Alpha lowered himself, his head bowed. Only Mira remained standing, her face twisted with fury and disbelief. "This is insane," she snarled. "She's nothing, broken, weak. Those pups could be anyone's." Silence. The word came from Kale, but it resonated with power that made the air vibrate. The twins at her breast began to glow brighter, their marks flaring like twin suns. Mira stumbled back, her bravado crumbling. Kyle stood slowly, cradling her sons. Her body ached, still bleeding from birth, but she drew herself to her full height. In that moment, she looked like what she had become. Not a broken girl, but a force of nature, a fulcrum upon which the future balanced. "I do not forgive," she said softly, "but I will give you a choice. Follow me into a new age, where worth is measured by more than the perfection of your shift, where broken things are given space to become something extraordinary. Or leave. Find another pack. But know this. These children will change everything, and those who stood against me will not be forgotten." The pack remained kneeling. Even the Alpha didn't dare rise. Kyle looked at them. These wolves, who had tormented her, diminished her, tried to erase her, and felt nothing. No satisfaction in their submission, no joy in their fear, only a cold certainty that she had become something they could never have imagined. The Shadow Returns night fell, and Kyle retreated to her den with her sons. The pack had offered her the Alpha's quarters, the finest den in the compound, but she refused. This small space had sheltered her in her darkest hour. She would not abandon it for comfort. She was nursing the twins when he appeared, the Shadow Man, the father. He materialized from darkness itself, his form more solid than before, his face finally visible. He was beautiful in the way storms are beautiful, dangerous and wild and impossible to control. His eyes, those ember-bright eyes, fixed on his sons with an expression Kale couldn't read. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left." He knelt beside her, his movements fluid as water. "I have watched every moment, every breath." "Who are you?" "I am what remains of the first pack," he said quietly. "The original bloodline, before fracture and politics diluted the wolf spirit. I have wandered for centuries, searching for a vessel strong enough to carry the old power forward." His hand reached out, hesitating, then gently touched one pup's head. The child cooed, leaning into the touch. "Your broken shift called to me," he continued. "It sang of potential, of a body that refused to accept limitation. You didn't fail your transformation. You transcended it." Tears burned behind Kyle's eyes. "I don't understand." "You will." He lifted his gaze to hers, and she saw centuries in those eyes. Loneliness, purpose, hope. These children will unite the packs. They will remind the wolves of what they were, what they could be again, and you will guide them. "Alone?" A smile ghosted across his lips, sad and ancient. I cannot stay. My time is ending. I was a ghost long before I touched you, a remnant of power seeking a final purpose, but I will live in them, in you, in what you build. No, Kyle's voice broke. You can't just... I already am. His form was fading, becoming translucent. Raise them strong. Teach them that brokenness is often transformation in disguise. And remember, the moon didn't crown you despite your broken shift. It crowned you because of it. Then he was gone, dissolving into shadow and starlight, leaving only the scent of pine smoke and the memory of his touch. Kyle sat alone with her sons, grief and understanding warring in her chest. She had never known his name, would never hear his voice again, but he had given her everything, purpose, power, proof that her suffering had meaning. She held her children closer and whispered promises into their fur. The New Order months passed, and the pack transformed under Kyle's quiet leadership. She did not rule with iron claws or brutal dominance. Instead, she simply existed as proof that the old ways were incomplete. The twins grew rapidly, their marks brightening with each passing moon. They shifted early, at 3 months instead of 16 years, their transformations smooth and natural as breathing. When they ran, the pack followed, drawn by instinct older than memory. Kale established new traditions. She opened the pack to outsiders, lone wolves, broken shifters, humans with wolf blood who had been rejected by other packs. She created a place where imperfection was not weakness, but potential. The compound swelled with new members. Other packs began to hear stories of the mother of twin alphas, the broken one who had been crowned by the moon itself. Some came to challenge her. Others came seeking refuge. All left changed. The alpha who had once dismissed her became her most loyal advisor, his pride transformed into devotion. Mira, humbled by power she couldn't comprehend, learned to serve rather than mock. The elders, seeing prophecy fulfilled, recorded everything, ensuring the story would survive. And Kyle learned that strength comes in forms the strong cannot recognize, that sometimes you must break completely to discover what you're truly made of. That the moon crowns not the perfect, but the persistent. Her sons grew into their power, identical and inseparable. They led hunts with instinct that predated training. They settled disputes with wisdom beyond their months. They embodied everything the ancient bloodline promised: leadership without cruelty, strength without arrogance, power tempered by compassion, because they had learned from a mother who knew what it meant to be powerless, who understood that mercy was not weakness, and that those who have suffered make the kindest rulers. The final moon years passed. The twins reached maturity, tall and powerful, their marks blazing like beacons. Under their leadership and Kale's guidance, the pack had become the strongest in generations, not through conquest, but through unity. Broken wolves from every territory made pilgrimage to serve the mother of alphas, and her influence spread like ripples across still water. But Kyle felt time pressing against her bones. The birth had taken more from her than she'd admitted. Her body, pushed beyond its limits, was slowly failing. She felt it in the ache of her joints, the shortness of her breath, the way exhaustion claimed her earlier each day. She said nothing. There was still work to do. On the anniversary of the twins' birth, the pack gathered in the great clearing where Kyle had once suffered her broken shift. The full moon rose, fat and luminous, exactly as it had been that terrible night. Kyle stood at the center, her sons on either side, the pack arranged in concentric circles around them. She looked at the faces watching her, faces that once mocked, now reverent, faces that had learned to see strength in unexpected forms. "I was broken here," she said, her voice carrying in the stillness. "My body rejected the shift. My wolf refused to come, and I thought I had failed." The pack listened in absolute silence. "But I understand now. My wolf was never absent. She was waiting, preparing, becoming something that could hold the future." Kyle placed a hand on each of her son's shoulders. These children are my shift, my transformation, not into a wolf, but into something greater. A mother, a leader, a bridge between what was and what will be. The twins' marks flared bright enough to cast shadows. The moon seemed to pulse in response, its light intensifying until the clearing blazed silver. Some transformations break you, Kyle continued, her voice softening. But break is not the same as end. Sometimes you must shatter completely to make room for what you're meant to become. She looked up at the moon, that witness to all her pain, all her triumph, and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, with her sons beside her and her pack surrounding her, Kyle finally let go of the breath she'd been holding for years. Her body relaxed, tension draining away like water. She didn't collapse. Her sons held her, their strength supporting what remained of hers. "Mother," one began, his voice cracking. "It's all right," she murmured. "You are ready. You have always been ready." Her eyes closed. The moon bathed her in silver light. And Kyle, the broken one, the mother of twin alphas, the girl who had been mocked and rejected and ultimately crowned by destiny itself, transformed one final time, not into a wolf, but into legend. Her body dissolved into moonlight and memory, leaving only the scent of pine smoke and the echo of her final words. Brokenness is transformation in disguise. The twins howled, their voices harmonizing in grief and tribute. The pack joined them, and the sound rose to the heavens, a song of loss and celebration, of endings and beginnings intertwined. Where Kale had stood, a single white flower bloomed, impossible and perfect. It would never wilt, never fade. The pack would tend it for generations, a living reminder that the broken can become extraordinary, that suffering can birth strength, and that sometimes the moon crowns not the perfect, but those brave enough to survive their own shattering. The twin alphas ruled together for decades, their leadership marked by the wisdom their mother had imparted. They built an empire founded on inclusion, where the broken were given space to transform, where weakness was recognized as potential, where every wolf knew that worthiness wasn't measured by the perfection of their shift, but by the content of their spirit. And on nights when the moon was full, the pack would gather around the white flower and tell the story of Kyle, the girl who was mocked for her broken shift, who bore children alone in darkness, who was crowned by the moon itself when she gave birth to the future. They would tell how the pack laughed at her broken shift until the moon crowned her mother of twin alphas. And the story would spread, carried by wind and wolf song, a testament to transformation and the strange, terrible, beautiful ways destiny chooses its vessels.